stand in recess for us to show appreciation for Senator Cooke. Sheriff Cooke. Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam President. Would ask to start the recognition of the Assistant Minority Leader, Senator John Cooke, that the reader please read the tribute.
Will the reader please read the tribute for Senator John Cooke?
The Senate of the Colorado Legislature convened in the second regular session of the 73rd General Assembly. Hereby extends our sincerest congratulations, commendation, and thanks to John Cooke, Senate District 13. Senator Cooke was elected to serve in the 70th, 71st, 72nd, and 73rd General Assemblies, where he represented his fellow citizens with dedication and honor. During his tenure with the Senate, he served with distinction as the Assistant Minority Leader and as the Majority Whip. Senator Cooke was also the chair of the Transportation Committee, the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, and served on the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee. Senator Cooke chaired the Committee for Legal Services and served on the Legislative Council Committee. He was also on Legislative Emergency Preparedness, Response and Recovery, and the Treatment of Persons with Mental Health Disorders in the Justice System Joint Statutory Committees. The citizens of Colorado and the members of the Senate express gratitude for Senator Cooke's exemplary service to our great state and wish him well in his future endeavors. Given this 11th day of May 2022, State Capital Denver, Colorado, Steve Fenberg, President of the Senate.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, please be seated. Senator Cooke came to the Colorado Senate after serving as the sheriff of Weld County. He moved up to the state Senate, and after he had been here about 30 seconds, realized, oops, it wasn't a move up. I think it is particularly challenging for people who are in elected offices like county sheriff or county commissioner to come to this deliberative body, to realize they don't have unilateral authority to do really anything other than say, yes, I'll be a prime sponsor or a co-sponsor on a bill, and then when bills finally make it to the floor, to vote yes or no. Senator Cooke served as the whip. He had his oak baton back here. He was the enforcer. Well, by enforcer, he was the one who got blamed if one of us wasn't around. If we were over here in the restroom or something, it was John's fault. And I think that was frustrating for John in his first few years, couple of years, because again, coming from the position of county sheriff for 12 years, is that right? And having the authority to hire and fire really on the spot hundreds of people, to be in control of a budget of millions of dollars and to have that unilateral authority. I think constituents often believe that we have similar authority here in the legislature, and I've tried to be patient over the past 12 years to explain to the constituents who ask, no, really the only authority that we have is to vote yes or no on hundreds of bills that are introduced in a finite 120-day session. And here we are on the final day of our final session. Senator Cooke came into the state Senate without having served in the state House, coming from that environment where he had that unilateral authority over his office, not department. He's been careful to remind me of that. He came into this building, as Senator Scott did, without having experience in this building. I'm sure he testified, he took positions on bills. In fact, I think he might have achieved statewide or even national recognition for his advocacy against one particular bill in 2013. My friend from Aurora might have been the prime sponsor of that bill. Senator Cooke went on to appear in a documentary called Rocky Mountain Heist, where he squared off with Governor Hickenlooper. I had a little bit in that movie as well as a state representative. But what an adjustment to come from being sheriff of a very conservative county into this environment where you're just one of 35 votes. Those first 4 years, grateful to be majority votes. Boy, it was great to be back in the majority, and Senator Cooke has commented, maybe he will when he gets to come here to the mic, that maybe he didn't understand the value, the opportunity of being in the majority. But I assure you, he certainly knows that now. Senator Cooke mentioned in my tribute that he has voted no on bills regarding cannabis, marijuana. He may have forgotten one vote. My first venture into that policy sphere, that topic, was when I said yes to constituents, Brad and Amber Wan, and their son Ben. Ben has epilepsy. And that first bill was Jack's Law, to provide access for kids in public schools to life-changing, symptom-curing medicine that's made from cannabis. Now, John has a reputation of voting against cannabis bills. But that day, that bill passed third reading in the Senate unanimously. And I'm grateful. Not a comfortable subject for Senator Cooke. Happy to stand up and express his opposition to it while honoring the Constitution that we've taken oaths to uphold. My friend Saskia Young, lobbyist, was sitting up here fighting back tears of joy of seeing that bill passed unanimously. I too was fighting back tears because I knew I was wrong. I admitted I didn't think medicine could be made from cannabis that would offer life-changing, symptom-curing results, and that bill opened my eyes. So I want to just say thank you to Senator Cooke for his support on that bill, but then his support over the past 4 years. I had the opportunity to serve as majority leader, and truly the best job in the building, in my opinion. And Senator Scott was the assistant majority leader for those 2 years. But our caucus decided to make a change. Well, they decided to have consistency in one position and change in another. I went from majority leader to minority leader, but Senator Scott did not continue as that assistant. Senator Cooke came in as assistant. And we learned to trust each other. We learned to communicate. It took a while. But I'm grateful because those in our caucus who might trust Senator Cooke's perspective more than mine, and those who might trust my perspective more than his, had somebody to go to listen to trust. And together we found a way to keep our caucus together. That was most evident after 2 years. In the last election in 2020, it was pretty clear to us a few months out from Election Day that our best outcome would be to lose 1 seat. Not a great message when you're hoping to take back a majority, win 2. The message isn't, hey, we're going to win 2, we're going to go down 1 and we'll be a net of 3 down. But John and I were on a excursion out in western Colorado, and we sat down, would you believe it, in the bar. Yes. First time I'd ever seen John Cooke in a bar. And we had a conversation. And it was, I think that we should offer to Senator Lundeen, our whip, who was not term limited, is not term limited, not at that time entering their last 2 years in the General Assembly. I think we should talk with Paul and offer him this. Go to the members of the caucus, those who will be returning for 21 and 22, and those who will be elected in 2020, and ask them, do they want to keep this team together or not? And if they do, I'll continue as minority leader, Senator Cooke as assistant, but we would turn the political operations over to Senator Lundeen and whoever the caucus might choose to be our caucus chair. Senator Marble was term limited. But if the majority of the caucus say no, they don't want to keep the team together, I'll nominate Lundeen. We're going to be in the minority, but if the majority of the caucus wants to have change, I'll support that. And John looked at me and said, yeah, let's do that. We made that decision together and talked with Senator Lundeen, and he agreed. He was somewhat reluctant at the beginning. But the partnership that we have, he is not my assistant. He is co-leader. He's the former sheriff of Weld County. He's managed a whole lot more people than we manage right now. But we learned to trust each other. We learned to be, I think, good stewards of our caucus and our political operation. And it's inappropriate that we get overtly political at the mic, but I have a very high level of confidence that our caucus is better positioned and working together than we ever have been in our efforts to regain a majority. And that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for my friend and my peer leader, Senator John Cooke. I don't have a lot of funny stories to tell about John. Maybe that will come later. It's a bit solemn for me because we've put it all out there and gave it our best. And we spent our last 4 years in this chamber in the minority, which it's not fun. But we've also learned through suing the Senate president and the secretary. Sorry, Cindy. Sort of. We learned through that to build a really effective working relationship with the former president, President Garcia, and the current president, then Majority Leader Fenberg, and the current Majority Leader Moreno. We've learned together the importance that even in the harshest times, the most confrontational times, or especially in those times, that the most effective thing that we can do is talk to each other. We may not be able to resolve our differences, but how many bills have been read at length in this chamber over the past 3 years? There was that 2,000-page bill that he asked to be read. Not my fault, it was him. So maybe if we counted in pages, maybe we're at or about where the House is over the past 4 years. But we resolved our differences, and we came to trust each other. And we also came to the point where we could come out of a conversation like that and go back to the members of our caucus, and with John and I both supporting the same perspective, the caucus could take confidence that, yeah, that's what we wanted to go do. That's not some measure of great leadership on my part. That's a measure of the quality and the trust that's demonstrated in this partnership. So enough being serious, enough pouring my heart out to you about my friend Senator John Cooke. I want to turn this mic over to those of you who come up and make fun of him and roast him and make this a less solemn time. But John, Senator Cooke, Sheriff Cooke, I want to say thank you for the bourbon, the rye, Thank you for the times that we were just able to sit together and talk through some of the more frustrating experiences of being in the minority the past 4 years. And thank you for being bold enough to come down here and ask for a 2,023-page bill to be read at length. It's been an honor to serve with you, and I count you as a friend. I wish you and Amy the very best, whether it's in North Carolina or Aruba. If you're ever in the Sarasota area, please look me up. I don't want to play golf because you'd kick my rear. I'd never be able to match that. But if you want somebody to ride around in the cart and drink a beer with you, I'd be happy to do it. God bless you, man.
Leader Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. And I take a little bit of an issue with the tribute to Senator Cooke because it, in my opinion, doesn't reflect his crowning legislative achievement, which is the founder of the Fun Caucus. Senator Cooke organized a fun whole factor in membership was you had to be fun, and would host events at his condo, a dinner, and then we'd go for the rooftop and have some cigars. And those are some of the best memories that I have in the legislature. And I'm honored that I was invited to be part of that Fun Caucus. Senator Cooke and I also share another distinction, that in spite of both being drawn into the new congressional district, we decided to pass on running. And we actually had multiple conversations with each other about that decision. And what we determined is that if we were actually ever to run against one another, it wouldn't really be a serious campaign, because what we'd end up doing is after every debate, we'd go to the bar and drink together and have a good time. That is just the relationship that Senator Cooke and I have, and I'm really grateful for it. The other thing that I love about Senator Cooke is that he is fond of carrying his birth certificate everywhere he goes because he believes it warrants his membership in the Latino caucus. Because he was born in Puerto Rico. And so, there it is. He has it. So, he's presented me with this evidence multiple times, and my response has always been the same: show me the long form and we'll discuss it. But, Senator Cooke, it has been a pleasure to spend time with you, my friend. I will never forget one of the more touching moments of being at a conference and hearing the story of how you got involved in law enforcement and how much of a difference that a law enforcement official made in your life at a very early age, and how that determined the course of the rest of your life. I'll never forget that story. It was incredibly touching, and I'm just grateful that you were vulnerable enough to share that with us. You will be a friend long after you leave this building, and I look forward to keeping in touch, maybe playing some golf, maybe organizing that Fun Caucus again, and best wishes to you, my friend.
Senator Buckner.
I don't have to ask permission to speak, right?
No, ma'am.
Well, I am so excited that I get to say something about Senator Cooke. I really didn't get to know him. Am I supposed to? No. I really didn't get to know him until this year. And I think we are an unlikely pair. We're an unlikely combo. Senator Cooke is from Weld County. I'm from Aurora. Senator Cooke is a Republican. I'm a Democrat. Senator Cooke is tall. I'm short. Senator Cooke is white. I'm not. No, I know he's my amiga. And mi español is muy poquito, but he's my amigo. He is a policeman, a sheriff, and I just want to feel safer in my community. And that's how we came to really understand each other, was really open conversations about safety and what it's like to be a police officer and what it's like to be a woman of color who doesn't feel safe in her community. So we came together and we ran a huge community safety bill, Senate Bill 145. And as we were organizing this bill, there were ideas from the governor's office. There were ideas from everywhere. And you know what? We didn't like the way those bills were going. So guess what? We formed our own bill and we called it the Cookner Bill. And that is Senate Bill 145. We really came up with some great ideas on how to make our communities feel safer, no matter what color you are. We found ways to figure out how to get police officers to come to work in their communities so your communities look more like you. Senator Cooke taught me more about opportunities for making our communities feel safer than anyone in this building, and I will never forget you for that. I respect Senator Cooke. He's an honorable man. He knows policy, and I learned so much about policy, and especially policy about policing while we ran the Cookner bill together. He is a courteous man, and he's honorable, and he is the true definition of gentleman. So, Senator Cooke, I will stay in touch with you even after you leave the Senate. He told me all about his mother. I'm not quite as old as his mother. I'm getting closer to her age. But the respect and love that this man has for his mother tells me a lot about your character. And he's just a good man. And I will stay in touch with him. And as we continue on this journey at this Capitol, trying to make sure our communities are safe, I'm going to keep calling Senator Cooke. So I'm going to miss you because I wanted to run another bill with you next session. So you'll just have to be my consultant as I run more bills. Hey, that's not a bad idea because you know policy. Yeah, he's offered to be my aide. But in all seriousness, I am so proud to know you, and I'm so glad I got to know you this year. And I want you to enjoy your retirement because you deserve it.
Senator Lee?
Thank you, Madam President. I was a little bit distracted there because I was actually reading about the Brookner bill, or whatever she called it. Cookner. Legislators give $30.5 million to boost law enforcement. So read your story. As Senator Buckner said, Senator Cooke and I are also somewhat unlikely allies. He coming to the Judiciary Committee and us spending hours and hours together on a weekly basis, he believing that I have an inability to control a clock and he anxious to move out of the committee at some reasonable hour of the day or early evening, as it turned out to be. But he brings a law enforcement perspective, and I very much appreciate the time he has spent with me in committee and outside of committee, providing insights into that perspective. I come to this table as a defense lawyer, having worked in the criminal justice world for some 30 years. I've known a lot of police, had them over to my house, have had some conversations, but none as deep, robust, and thoughtful as I've had with Senator Cooke. So I appreciate that deeply, that you would take the time to do that. But I also appreciate the opportunities that we have had to discuss bills. In one momentous occasion, before we were to hear the significant felony murder bill in the Judiciary Committee, which was a bill I had been working on for 3 years unsuccessfully, and Senator Cooke came up to, we made modifications after modifications. He came up to me before the committee and said, "You should be sitting down before I tell you this," which I proceeded to do. And then he said, "I'm going to support your bill." I was surprised, would be an understatement, but I said to him, trying to be deferential and non-dissuasive, "How come?" And he said, "Because it's fair, and you've worked it, and it's the right thing to do." So we proceeded through the committee and heard the bill, and he did come out and support it, and it passed, and it ended up being signed by the governor. It was not a soft on crime bill by any stretch of the imagination. What it did was change the category of felony murder from mandatory life without parole, even for the less guilty of the participants, to a situation where that person could get, I think it was 18 to 32 years. So it was a significant penalty. We have had many deep discussions over very complex bills late into the evening. I would suggest that during the legislative session of 120 days, and take this in the way I say it, I've spent more time with Senator Cooke than I have with my wife. I would not say more pleasurably. Probably the most, I think, telling insight into our relationship was, and I can't remember what the bill was, but again, it had been a pretty hotly contested bill for a couple of years. We finally brought it to committee and had a long, extensive hearing on it. And at the end of the hearing, Senator Cooke supported the bill. I think it was one that provided funding for law enforcement or courts in rural communities to provide services or whatever. But as we're exiting the committee room, I walked up to Senator Cooke to thank him for my vote, for his vote on the bill, and he turned to me, completely straight-faced, and said, "Well, you know, Pete, not all of your bills suck." So I thought that was pretty high praise for my criminal justice agenda coming from the good sheriff from El Paso County. Again, I very much honor you, respect you, look up to you, have appreciated our relationship, and can look in the eye and call you a friend. Thank you, sir.
Senator Pedersen? Senator Coram, I have you in just a couple more.
Thank you, Madam President. I also didn't get to know Senator Cooke that well until this year. I always knew that he was a good guy. I liked working with him. But it really has been a pleasure to get to know him better working on a very difficult bill this year together. I think that it's so reflective of his values and dedication to really be focused on outcomes. And, it's frustrating outside of this building, the way that people see the world and the work that we do as black and white. Things are good or bad. It's not about outcomes, it's more about ideology. And I think that can be incredibly frustrating. And what I've really appreciated about the bill that we've been trying to work through together is finding compromise, focusing on outcomes, and making sure that we're actually able to pass really important pieces of legislation. We know that the work down here is much more complicated than people realize outside of the building. It's been a pleasure to work with you. to see your passion and dedication, your kindness. I appreciate that you are also a whiskey drinker, and when it's not the bars outside of this building, once we're done with work, I appreciate that you try to provide a space where people can go to get to know each other and have a drink and sit down and listen to Mr. Minority Leader playing the guitar. That's one of my favorite memories is sitting in the office with all of you listening to Senator Holbert play the guitar. And so just want to thank you for your partnership this year. It's been hard. We're still not through it. It's been great to get to know you, Senator Cooke, and I wish you all the best.
Senator Corr, why don't you jump in?
Thank you, Madam President. I heard the minority leader saying all these kind things about Senator Cooke, and it reminded me of when I was in the House of Representatives, and the good senator was here, and it's not the guy I knew. I didn't like him. You know that bill you talked about earlier, that water bill? That was my bill. Came out of the House 64-1. He killed it. I didn't like him. Took a while to get over that. But I got to tell you that when I got into the General Assembly, I came to the House, my first campaign. I was out campaigning and traveling hard, and had to go sell some cattle over in La Junta one day, and was in there. And ironically, I had gotten an email from a girl that I went to school with. We've stayed in contact with over the years. She's good friends of Diana and I. And anyway, I read the email, and it was what to do about the when people have heart attacks. And so I read this, and lo and behold, 4 days later, I'm in La Junta, and they turn a bull into the ring. The bull's on the fight. The ringman gets out. He gets out. My brother said to me, that bull really scared that guy. And all of a sudden, he collapsed, went over backwards, and amazingly, everybody sat there. But because of that email, I ran across and checked, and he had no pulse. He was blue as blue, and I provided CPR and did the chest compressions. I waited what I thought was too long and went to mouth, and he instantly took a breath. And reading the whole thing, I rolled him over knowing that he was going to vomit, and he did. And anyway, the gentleman survived, and but I remember I went outside. That was just such a great feeling. I went outside, and the first thing I did is I called my wife, and I said, Diana, I think I just had the greatest feeling of my life. And she said, what did you do? I said, I just kissed a man. She said, do we need to talk? So going back to really not caring for Cooke, it wasn't total dislike. I just didn't care for him. You know, he hadn't grown on me yet. But I got into the Senate, and you know, it was we were in the majority, and I got acquainted with John, and the tarnish began to wear a little bit off of him, and he became tolerable. And you've talked about his room with sharing his alcohol. He is very generous with my rye, I can tell you that. But we went to Israel then, and we roomed together for 8 days. And I got to tell you, friend, if you ever need CPR, I'm there for you. But I've learned so much from John. You know, he has been my go-to guy on law enforcement, and I don't think there's anybody in the state that I trust their opinion more than Sheriff John Cooke, because he's been in the trenches, he's been in this building, and he understands both sides of it. And he is truly one hell of a guy. And I'm proud that my dislike for him has turned into love for him, and I truly love the man. He is like a brother to me, and very proud to call him that. Thank you.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, many people have talked about Senator Cooke's legal mind and his law enforcement background, but the way that I came to know Senator Cooke was actually on transportation. And we worked on a bill, Senate Bill 1, actually, a few years ago. And I remember sitting in his office and I told him to his face that I don't lie. That if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it and I'm not going to waver. And I think he didn't know me very well, and I think he kind of thought, yeah, sure, we'll see. And he said to me, well, I operate the same way. And it turns out that the both of us came together and found a compromise, and I learned that to be true about Senator Cooke. He doesn't lie, and he does what he says he's going to do. And so I really appreciated that opportunity because of that relationship and because of that trust in one another, we were able to find a compromise, and it was pretty exciting, particularly for somebody who was serving in the minority. So I also, I don't know if people know that his mother is my constituent. And I knew your mother before I knew that she was your mother. And I used to serve on the city council, and so she used to watch the council on Channel 8 and had lots of comments. And I came to find out that in 2016, I was in a highly targeted seat, and I think I was #1 on the at that time majority's list to take out and to prevent from coming down here. And much to Senator Cooke's chagrin, his mother liked me, and she supported me. And she was even willing to put my yard sign in her yard. And Senator Cooke was like, no, we can't be having that, you know? We cannot be having her yard sign in your yard, Mom, because she's our #1 target. But I'm very proud that she kept it, and I truly believe it's what put me over the top in 2016. So thank you very much for that support, because it did give us an opportunity to continue working together down here. And so I very much appreciate that. And congratulations, and thank you for being the kind of man that does not lie and does what he says he's going to do.
The power of a yard sign. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam President. Sheriff, you know, there are many senators in this chamber, but there's only one sheriff. And while it is impressive to be a senator in the state of Colorado, to be and to have the responsibility that you had to be the sheriff uniquely qualifies you to be a senator in the state of Colorado. I was thinking even before Senator, the other senator from El Paso County's remarks, I have spent more time with you. I have probably spent more time with you in the well than I've spent with my significant other and family, and am going to miss you. We spend an awful lot of time at one end of the dais looking at each other like, is that really what they're going to do? What trouble can we make on that? Of the constructive kind, of the kind to speak for the people of Colorado and to promote what we believe are most important, which is public safety the rights of victims, the things that people worry about when they wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. John, you really have been the go-to guy for everything law enforcement, and it's impressive to hear our colleagues that may not totally agree with us say that they've learned from you things about law enforcement and about people who are in the profession of law enforcement, about the challenges and the commitment and compassion. I think that one of the strengths of citizen legislators is epitomized by what you have brought to the Colorado General Assembly, to the Senate, in your service here. The sincere concern for crime victims, for communities, for ensuring that those who get up in the morning and or get up at night and put a badge on and go on duty, and their families have very unique challenges, stresses, and again, there have been significant opportunities for you that you have taken, that I've seen you work across the aisle to make law enforcement more effective, to support our law enforcement officers in Colorado. And I've learned a lot. For instance, I've learned it isn't an office, it's a department. And I've learned that sometimes the whip carries a stick. And most of all, as I said about one of our colleagues earlier, I have learned that over and over again, as we've stood shoulder to shoulder and side by side on so many legislative issues, the issues are serious. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. And yeah, as the founder of the Fun Caucus, you have been an example of that as well, that the issues are what's important, not each of us individually, because the public policy and the good of the people of Colorado and our districts goes beyond anything that any of us individually are. And so that is what I will always remember about you, that you are a solid ally when you're an advocate on the other side, and we've been on the other side a few times, that you have been a worthy opponent, one with integrity, one with principle, that we can always rely on to be who you are, what you are, and to do what you say you will do. And I'm going to miss you. Don't go to Florida, by the way, to see our friend, not because he's not wonderful to see and all, but I have this vision of his pool down there with a bunch of out-of-work senators dressed in really, really bizarre ways, sitting around in lounge chairs. I'm
going to gavel you down for that visual.
So, John, the toughest part for me is looking into next year and saying, who's going to be there for law enforcement on judiciary? I don't know, and I hope God will answer that question, because you've been God's answer to that question in my service here. Thank you.
Senator Fields.
My dear Sheriff, you know, when I think about Senator John Cooke, I think about law enforcement. I think about the kinds of things it takes, first of all, to be a sheriff. And it's not easy when you think about the multiple things that you have to juggle in your role as sheriff, managing prisons, managing public safety, supporting law enforcement as we see them take their role to protect and to serve the public, and the interaction that it takes to be a good sheriff. So I'm here to just say thank you for all of the support that you have rendered me in referencing to understanding a little bit about criminal justice, because sometimes you can be lopsided. And what I've learned from you is the role of sheriff and the role that it plays in law enforcement as it relates to criminal justice. And I only saw things from the line of being a victim, and you've been so on the side of law enforcement and also for the causes of victims, because you've seen the impact that crime has on people who have been impacted by crime. You've seen both sides. And you've seen those that are prosecuted and those who have been, those who are defended or represented by public defenders. So you've seen both sides. But what I know about Senator Cooke is he is a man of his word. He is well-versed. I've been in his office at several times. I don't know if it's Andy Griffin or John Wayne that in your office.
Both. It's both.
They're both in there. But he is proud of his work in law enforcement. He doesn't try to hide it, and it's evidence as when you go into his office. He's proud of the work that he's done. And I think that's important, that you don't try to, or any of us, try to shrink who we are and try to push aside the experience that we bring into this chambers. Your experience and your ability to talk on it has been significant and should not be understated. And without having that balance, let's say in judiciary, to influence votes or to shape public policy in the best interests of the state of Colorado, then that was very, very important. We needed you there at that time. You were in the right place at the right time for the right policy that needed to be debated. And I appreciate the support that you've lended me and the support that you've provided to the state of Colorado and to the state Senate. Thank you.
Senator Liston.
Working with you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Cooke, it's been my real honor and privilege to serve with you. My regret is that it's only been just 2 years. I remember I first met you, I think it was probably about 4 years ago when I was still in the House, and we would periodically meet at the watering hole across the street before it burned down or whatever happened to it. And I go, you know, this is a real interesting fellow. And I knew that you had been the sheriff of Weld County, but I really didn't know you. And when I was in the House, you know, our paths would cross, and I would kind of say hello and vice versa. But I really never got to know you until, you know, being the new person here in the Senate and sitting behind you, I've you know, kind of gotten to know you better, and the banter that you and I and others have enjoyed. But for those of you and out there being in your office, you can't help but notice the big cutout of Marshall Dillon, and you epitomize Marshall Dillon
in all respects. You know, every time I go in there and I see that cutout of Marshall Dillon, I think of you every time. And you're a real stalwart gentleman. You're a gentleman. And I mean that in the highest sense, that you're a gentleman, you're stalwart, you have that poise, you epitomize what a sheriff or a marshal really is. You always speak the truth. I've seen you just sporadically in judiciary because we've never had the opportunity to serve, but even before your good colleague Senator Gardner said it, I was thinking about this. I have no idea of who we're going to have to replace you on judiciary, and for that matter here in this body, because you have filled such a huge space and spoken on behalf of the victims and law enforcement, and what is really good about this country, and you've represented your county so well. You've been extremely respectful to everybody. I say this sort of tongue in cheek. You're the Marshall Dillon. I would be honored to be your Chester. I'll have to get the walk down, but and then there's that other cutout that you have of Andy of Mayberry, which you're the Andy of Mayberry. You know, you're wise, and I think going back to Marshall Dillon, for those of us who remember Gunsmoke, for that generation, so much of the business of Gunsmoke was done at the bar. And, you know, I think of all the scenes that where Marshall Dillon was there with Doc and Chester and Miss Kitty, and Marshall Dillon could solve half the world's problems at the bar. And I think that's what was settled at the bar in your office. So, and then Andy of Mayberry, you know, there's that good streak there of Andy of Mayberry. You're really easygoing. You have a great sense of humor. Like I say, the banter that you and I could always enjoy. A couple other things that I can relate to you so well, besides that we're tall and good looking. And smart. And smart, is that, you know, we both have that English heritage, and that we're both proud, we're Orangemen, where we have that Englishman. I'm a proud Englishman. I can't claim that. I'm not Puerto Rican. I've been to Puerto Rico, but I wasn't born there. I was actually born in England, as you know. So, like I say, it's been a real honor and privilege to serve with you. You know, as we talked about this, you know, you were saying how much you would have to pay me to say something about you. Well, you don't have to pay me anything. I would gladly pay you to say everything, and it's just been a real honor. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Senator Heisey.
The honor's been all mine.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, the first time I heard John Cooke's name, because quite frankly, I came from the other end of the state. Some of us that were fairly new were talking about where we were going to be staying. You know, there's the green awning casa over here, and then there's couch surfing, and somebody said, unless you're John Cooke, then you just buy a place. I thought, oh, rich guy. And then I found out he was a sheriff. And I know what a sheriff makes. And I thought, I wonder how he did that without being indicted. But then I realized, oh, sheriff, mental note, speak slowly. So, you know, in case you haven't picked up on it through the past few years, sheriff and commissioners, they sometimes can butt heads. The sheriff controls the budget, even the sheriff's budget. commissioners control the budget. However, the sheriff carries a gun. There's always some tension there as to really who's really the most important elected official in the county, and it's not something that's going to be solved over a drink at the local bar. I do appreciate the sheriff, and we called each other sheriff and commissioner the whole 4 years, but sitting in the back, I always had a ringside seat on how John was going to vote. And if it was a law enforcement or touched on something legal or illegal or whatever, if I didn't vote the way John did, I better have a good reason why. So I want you to know you've been a mentor. I appreciate that. I appreciate your insight as to why and how you voted the way you did. And Madam President, I'm wondering if we could kill the recording here for just a little bit. As a commissioner, I really hate to go on record as saying, I'm going to miss you, Sheriff.
Thanks, buddy. Same here. Did you call me a butthead?
Senator Lundeen.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I've always thought we all deserve walk-up music. You know, if you're a baseball player, when you go to the plate, you get walk-up music. I think we all should get walk-up music. And I think the walk-up music for Senator Cooke would be the theme to Gunsmoke. Matt Dillon is striding to the podium to have his say. I think that would be appropriate. I've kind of fallen into this pattern of picking out three descriptors for the folks I'm talking about. The first descriptor I want to pick for Senator Cooke is serendipity. Isn't that a wonderful word? It's such a light, airy, floating, almost feminine kind of word, and I'm going to use that to describe the senator from Weld County. A hoot is the second word I would pick. He is a hoot. And the third word I'm going to pick is obvious. He's the sheriff. And those are the three words I would use to describe. So serendipity, it describes something completely unexpected and pleasant that it has happened so. I mean, you've got this lanky legislator, tall, you know, he looks like a law enforcement guy. He honestly does. But when you really listen to him, certainly on anything that has been through the Judiciary Committee, if it touches law enforcement, but on any number of other, the guy's a policy wonk. Who would have thought? I, at times, will listen to him drill into something in the well and say, you know, I didn't know Cooke had that depth in him, but he does. And he goes layer after layer into difficult policy issues. Another thing that is absolutely unexpected, and I would say incredibly important and pleasurable, is the guy's genuine, visible love for his mom. I mean, that's, I don't know whether it's the fact that tough guys, when they don't know what to do, you know, somebody points a camera at them, they say, hi, Mom, or whether there's some more to it. But the man's genuine concern and love for his mom as she's going through the transitions that we all go through in life. And it's tough for us. I mean, and I think I'm a little older than Sheriff. Well, we're close to the same age. It's tough for us when we begin to interact in our parents and the challenges they're having, because we immediately confront our own mortality as we watch our parents confront their mortality. And that is the sort of thing that draws a lump to your throat and heat to your eyes as you manage the situation of your parents. And I will tell you, on more than one occasion, as we've interacted across the desks here over the last number of days, as the sheriff has been helping, as the senator has been helping his mother make a transition, it has brought tenderness to my heart. So there's this soft side to the guy that you wouldn't necessarily expect. He's a hoot, and the majority leader talked a little bit about the Fun Caucus. Well, let me tell you kind of the genesis of the Fun Caucus, or as I perceive it, part of the genesis of the Fun Caucus. A few years back, somebody had the great idea that we should force legislators and others who would interact in policy into silos. We should prevent them from interacting because, you know, over time immemorial, the history of humankind, where you build a relationship is when you break bread. Well, in our modern times, restaurants aren't free. you've got to spend a little bit of money in a social environment to break bread and therefore create relationship. Well, the Fun Caucus, everybody pays their own way, so there's this completely Amendment 41 compliant, but the reality is it's an opportunity for left to meet right. The further left and the further right, the better the conversation is and the more fun that is had. And so there's actually, I think, a legislative benefit to what is, at the end of the day, just an incredibly fun time. And the idea of the Fun Caucus, and Senator Cooke is the convener of the Fun Caucus. Another element, and this is the ironical piece, a hoot maybe is not the exact perfect descriptor, but the guy every morning carries around a coffee cup that, if you've looked at it, and usually this morning he had a donut in one hand and a coffee cup in the other hand. What better description of a cup than that? A coffee cup in one hand, a donut in the other, and the coffee cup says, "World's okayest cup." The irony in that is spectacular, and it speaks to the sense of humor that the senator has. And the third descriptor, sheriff. Now, I'm a kid from rural Nebraska, and I got to tell you, we grow up understanding that the highest reasonably, appropriately elected official in America is the county sheriff. I remember many circumstances, Minden, Nebraska, 2,600 people. When anything was going sideways, everybody knew, go talk to the sheriff. Whether it's a political issue, a law enforcement issue, quite frankly, marital disputes, go talk to the sheriff. And so there's this ethos in Western America, I think across the country, frankly, that realizes and respects the sheriff even today, as we've let our institutions evolve and give greater weight and greater importance politically and other ways to folks other than the sheriff. There's still something in the heart, in the breast of a small town Western American kid that I guess I still am in many ways, that knows it's the sheriff that is in fact the law enforcement official, the political official that you turn to and look for guidance. And that will be where I will conclude, is looking for guidance. When I wandered into this body, big, tall, lanky guy, I'm tall, 6'1", and I wear Lucchese's, so I got an extra inch and a half or inch and a quarter going there, so that makes me, he still towers over me. The tall guy puts his arm around my shoulder and says, "Son, I'm going to help you figure a few of these things out." And that is exactly what he has done for me in the 4 years that I've been in the Senate. Senator, Sheriff, John, thanks for being a good friend. Thanks for being a great senator, and thanks for being a sheriff.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. I'm going to miss you tons. You're going to do great as president.
I hope so.
Senator Priol, I have a bit of a list going, so I'll add you onto it. But I have Senator Sonnenberg next. Do you want to jump in? And Priola, I'll add you after Senator Gonzalez. Senator.
Well, thank you, Madam President. Fun caucus, I wasn't invited. Were you invited? And you know what? He told the good senator over here that not all his bills suck. He's never told that to me. You know, I know Senator Cooke as a complainer. Yeah, I'm going to see my wife in North Dakota, but it's going to be 50 degrees there and it's too cold to play golf. So seriously, it was 20 below here. He says, "Oh, the humidity's too high. Oh, they don't know how to drive there when it gets a little cold in that humidity." Well, he's going to have to figure it out, because I'm guessing he's not going to fly back here in the middle of winter to play golf. You know, I got to tell you, he told you the story where he met me for the first time up at a house in Grover. And for those of you that don't know, Grover is halfway between Keota and Hereford. And you're still going, where? That's out there in God's country. But I think I actually made the impact, and I can't tell you what I said, but I spoke at a Weld County Republican breakfast. And he was in the back of the room. And the question was asked, my stance on law enforcement. And if you want to know my response, I will tell you in private, because I sure can't say it here at the well. That was when I was a little younger, a little naive, and I was actually gung-ho. There's one way to do this, and only one way. I don't know if he remembers what I said at that point, but he came up afterwards and says, "Not sure how well that'll work, but I like your attitude." I also remember another time that one of his deputies stopped me on the campaign trail. And I failed to share with the deputy. I didn't tell the deputy that I was running for office or anything. The deputy was actually very nice. And I got to the event and I told the good sheriff that I had been stopped by one of his deputies for speeding, but he didn't write me a ticket. And he immediately, "What is his name?" He wanted to know who would have possibly let me off. I have learned since to make sure and drive the speed limit in Weld County, though especially those 8 years when I was in the House and he was still sheriff, that he couldn't target me. So with that said, I have thoroughly enjoyed serving with the good senator from Weld County. I actually enjoyed working with him when he was sheriff. There were a number of times I sought his counsel. And quite honestly, even when I'm done here, I'm guessing there'll still be a number of times that I will continue to seek his counsel. We sometimes are a little, I probably shouldn't say this, Noel, either, but he and I are sometimes inappropriate with each other. But it's with each other, and I'm not going to file a complaint against him, and maybe he will against me, whatever. But no.
Cheated on you.
But we have a wonderful relationship, and a relationship that I will treasure, quite frankly, forever. And quite honestly, I'm not sure I'll be welcome in your home in North Carolina with your wife there, as we've had our issues at times, but I will come see you. I look forward to coming seeing you. I might even play golf with you. We'll have Holbert drive around, have the beer. We'll do a scramble so I don't have to hunt for my balls all the time, and we can just do your balls that are in the middle of the fairway and a lot farther down the road. With that said, I am truly honored to call you my friend, even when we disagree on policy. We have remained good friends, I would say excellent friends, someone that if I ended up in trouble or needed something, right or wrong, you would be there. And I would do the same for you, my friend. God bless you. Look forward to staying in touch. Love you, my man.
You've been my light down here, seriously. You've been my light down here, seriously.
Aww. Senator Smallwood. That was cute.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem, and I will keep my comments brief. I'm here mostly because I'm smart enough to know that if I don't, Senator Cooke will remember this forever. At 20 years from now, I'll be somewhere and he will remind me that I did not come up and speak about his last day in the session. So I'm doing this a little bit out of terror. But John, I want to thank you for a great 6 years. Very much like the leader and Ray. I mean, Senator Sonnenberg, folks that really welcomed me in as a rookie, took me in as one of your own, even though I didn't know anything about anything. Probably still don't. And when you hear your colleagues talk about a void that is going to be in this building and a void that is most likely going to happen as legislation is crafted, that's the truth.
That's the truth. It's been so fantastic to be able to go into your office, which, as you know, is not only always open, but has America's most comfortable sofa. To be able to talk about things from a law enforcement perspective, from a DA's perspective, a prosecutor's perspective, a defender's perspective. I mean, that kind of knowledge is just not something that we come across every day, and that is going to be really sorely lacking in this building. So I want to thank you for being a friend. Thank you for always having your door open, like you've heard everybody else mention. I look forward to more rounds of golf when the burdens of the legislature aren't upon us, and grateful to have known you. So look forward to staying in touch. God bless you, bud.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I want you to know I have served with Senator Cooke on the Judiciary Committee since my first year here in 4 years. And this is the first time he has not texted me about complaining about the clock. And honestly, the only reason I came up here to wish him well is because generally me and him have an agreement on voting. Is like, I don't need to sit here and explain my vote. And generally we would both just vote on our bills, and every time he chooses to say something, I'm like, darn it, now I have to say something. So I'm here to contradict you, but it's been a true honor. We've had a lot of fun in committee. I learned a lot from you. Still good to know at my age that there's still people out there calling it dope. And heard it many times at the well. One of the fondest moments of the learning curve with my time with John Cooke was one time we were sitting there talking, and we have late committees, as you know, in Judiciary, which is nothing compared to the House Judiciary, and me and Cooke never experienced that, so for us it still seems long. But I think one of the most enjoyable times is when, you know, we're sitting there and we have our waters or drinks in coffee cups, and John told his aide to go down and get him some iced tea, and he came back up and then he was like, oh my God, this is actually iced tea. But it has been a true honor to serve with you. I wish I could have got you a plaque to make you the world's okayest senator, because I feel you've carried that title just as well as you have for COP. But I'm not going to keep this long because I know how much you and me like to keep it short and not keep it this, but it has truly been an honor. I hope it will get you out here and we can actually play golf, and I can see you're as good as you allegedly say you are. So thank you.
Thanks. It has been a pleasure.
Senator Gonzalez. You're going to have to pick which Cooke you're addressing.
I know. I can't tell them apart. Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, it's actually really fitting that I am following Senator Rodriguez because, as those of us on Senate Judiciary have made reference to, Senator Lee does not believe in time limits. Sheriff Senator Cooke does. And there'd be moments in Senate Judiciary where, you know, Pete and I would be like real dialed in on whatever bill it is, and these two, Rodriguez and Cooke, are over here, and I could see them like sending each other text messages and gifts and stuff and making each other laugh, and I'm like, what the heck is going on over here? But being able to, in the midst of things that are really difficult and hard and complicated, find ways to make light of it. Even just a couple of weeks ago, during the Rhea floor debate, you know, sitting over here and laughing and joking with you 1 minute, and then us going, claws out and everything to the wall on the Rhea policy, and that's the way that we operate, right? No permanent friends and no permanent enemies, and no hard feelings, no matter what happens on the policy work. And so it's been an honor to serve alongside you, and I'm sure that as we continue on through this work, no matter where our paths cross next, I will always appreciate you and the perspective that you bring, because that is how, when we come together, that's how we do our best work. And so, honored to work alongside you.
Thank you. Honor's all mine. Thank you.
Senator Priola.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say a few words for Senator Cooke. He will be missed. I don't think he would remember this, but I do actually remember the first time I met him. I don't always necessarily remember the first time I meet people because I tend to kind of judge them or figure out who they are or what they are probably the 6th, 7th, or 8th time I meet them. But I do remember the first time I met Senator Cooke, and I don't, if you remember this, I was having lunch with Rep. Sane at the time up in Greeley, and you were in a restaurant, and you walked by, and you were in your sheriff's gear, and she introduced us to each other, and so on and so forth. So I do remember the first time we met. But, and another thing you probably don't know, I'm sure you don't, is that when I was making the decision to run for the Senate, in my opinion, the Senate did some really weird stuff I didn't necessarily agree with, especially the Republican caucus at the time. So I watched the bills you ran and the votes you made to decide if it was the kind of thing that I wanted to sign up for and spend an entire summer working hard on. And I don't think I've ever told you that. But the shrewd decisions you made and the bills you chose to carry that year, 2015, 2016, helped me decide to run in 2016. I will always appreciate your knowledge of law enforcement, and it will be sorely missed here in the coming years. You've made a huge contribution to this state. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Before I turn it over to Senator Cooke, I wanted to maybe offer a little bit of humor. One time, before I get there, John and I became the kind of go-to chairs of the committee of the whole. Our friend Senator Coleman seems to have adopted that role for his caucus. When we were in the majority, Majority Leader Scheffel would often tap either John or me to chair the committee of the whole because we both enjoyed it. When I was Majority Leader, the most alarming incident of my 2 years in that position occurred when John was in the chair. And it started with me sitting over here as Majority Leader, and then Minority Leader Lucia Guzman came out of her chair, arced up in the sky just shy of the chandelier. She may have bounced off that a little bit and landed in my face, and you better do something about this. John ruled against a division. President Grantham came out of his office and was asking, what happened? And Senator Cooke had explained that maybe a colleague had convinced him that that was all entirely okay. I looked at the president and said, the rules are clear. If there's any question in the rules, you decide the outcome. It was decided that we would go back and honor the division, and that was resolved fairly quickly, but my goodness, was Leader Guzman and Assistant Leader Garcia, and I think everyone over on this side of the aisle, there was a tsunami of outrage and fury. And thank you, John, that was wonderful. I'll never forget that experience. With that, colleagues, would you please put your hands together and welcome the former Sheriff of Weld County, Senator John Cooke.
Thanks, buddy. All right. You got anything to say? But I want you to know this is not Marshal Dillon. It is Deputy Dillon. I deputized him. You probably can't see, but he has a Weld County, well, kind of a Weld County Sheriff's badge here. So he's not Marshal Dillon. He's my deputy. But anywho, whoa, I think I have to defend a few things. It's like all the talk about meeting in the bars and the alcohol in my office and all this. I'm thinking I need to check into AA tomorrow because I'm thinking, man, am I an alcoholic or what? But it is fun. And the Fun Caucus, that was, I have to comment on that. That was fun. I have a loft down here that's 885 square feet, and we usually had 35 people from the House, Senate, Republicans, Democrats,
in that loft, and then we'd go down to Ruth Chris, because it was in that building, and had dinner. And the very first year, it got a little bit too much fun, because after dinner, then we went up to the rooftop at about midnight, and there was probably about 8, 9 of us left, and we all started drinking again. So we started at 6 in the cocktail party, went down to dinner. Bill Cadman was there, and he bought like 6, 8 bottles of wine on top of everything else that we had. And then we went up to the rooftop and drank some more. Though somebody had a wise idea of, hey, let's go down to Tarantulas and play pool. So about 6, 8 of us did that at about midnight. And 2 senators to be nameless, one Mike Johnson and one Owen Hill, who are best friends, almost got into a fist fight. We had to pull them apart. And it was over something very serious policy issue. Owen Hill accused Mike Johnson of cheating at shuffleboard. And it was a big deal. We had to literally separate them so that they would not duke it out there in Tarantulas. And we got done about 2 in the morning. Luckily, I only had to crawl up to my loft, which was right there in that building. But a couple of others, I won't mention his name, but his initials are DM, and went out to have breakfast with a couple of others. And I'm thinking, this is on a Thursday night, so I'm thinking, holy moly. I got into bed about 2:30, and those guys went out for breakfast, and I'm thinking, there's no way anybody's going to be here on the floor at 9. And I dragged my sorry Fanny in here at 9 o'clock, and there they were, sitting here. And it was a great night. And that from that day, tradition was born. Unfortunately, COVID kind of ruined a lot of things, and it really kind of ruined or put a damper on the Fun Caucus as well. And as far as the other, yes, I was convinced by a particular senator who also happened to almost get in a fight with Mike Johnson that night, that we could rule on the division. I was in the chair, and he specifically asked me to be the chair, and he goes, hey, I know we're going to get rolled. There's going to be 18 and 17, but rule anyway. And I said, are you sure? Are you sure we can do this? He goes, oh, yeah. And I go, show me the rules. And he showed me the rule. And I go, I'm not sure that applies. And I said, have you talked to leadership? Have you talked to Senator Holbert and the president and Effie at the time? I said, have you talked to them? Oh, yeah. We talked to them. It's not a problem. All right. Just like he said, I ruled against the division. Oh my God! Lucia and I have been like best buds for her time, my first time here, and I thought she was going to kill me. It was quite the event. So I'm just trying to pass the buck and pass the blame on why I did what I did. I got to tell you, this is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be, and I want to thank everybody that came down and spoke. It's when you have a badge and a nightstick and a threat, it's amazing how many people you can get down here to say nice things about you. So I appreciated all those words. But this is really a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. It is bittersweet. Everybody says it goes by so quickly, and it does. I mean, after my first 4 years, I'm thinking, my God, this thing is like a lifetime. And do I want to do this again for another 4 years? Because that just seems like an eternity. And looking back, I can remember my first day here. The Greeley Tribune, when they actually kind of covered the Capitol a little bit, did a front page story, and the headline was, we're going to get things done, because that's what I told them, we're going to get things done. I was a little optimistic at the time. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. So for those that are just new or going to be around for a little bit, appreciate it, because it will go in a blink of an eye. And, people ask, am I going to miss it? I go, I'm not going to miss sitting here till 2 in the morning or in judiciary, that kind of stuff, but I'm going to miss the people. Our policy analyst the other day, Jason, said, what made you the happiest here? And, it's like, I'm thinking, what did make me the happiest here? It was a great question. It was like, I realized it's not one thing. It wasn't like this one particular deal made me happy. It was the people I got to know. And mentor gets thrown around pretty loosely, but it is actually true. My first 4 years, I was telling the leader the other day, we were in the majority, and I didn't appreciate it. I didn't know what it was like, because I never served in the minority my first 4 years. And I did not appreciate what that meant to be in the majority. And so, looking back, I wish I would have appreciated it a little bit more, because being in the minority, believe me, I don't really appreciate that too much. But if you do, like I said, look back favorably, because it's a great time. There's only 35 of us in this entire state, 35 that represent 6 million people. So I don't look at it as an exclusive club or a special club, but there's, I don't know, 14,000 cops throughout the state, but only 35 senators. And so it does make it a special time to be here. And I agreed with a lot of what Senator Scott said. I'm looking back, how did I get here? It's like, man, my life dream wasn't to get into state politics. My life dream was to be in law enforcement. Ever since high school, I shared that story with Senator Moreno. That was my life dream. And I was so looking forward, actually, when I was done sheriffing. And after I got elected for the third time, I was term limited after the third time, and it was, hey, what are you going to do next? Literally, the day after I got elected for the third time, what are you going to do next? I go, hey, I don't know. I just got elected. Let me figure it out. And I'm flying back from Chicago on Southwest, and I figured it out. It was like 2 years later. And so when people ask, hey, what are you going to do next? I said, I'm going to be a flight attendant. And they look at me like, they didn't know if I was serious or joking. And I was kind of half both serious and joking. I figured I can do this. Here are the exits. I was going to say gas mask, but oxygen mask if it falls. I mean, I could do that. And so I was looking forward to being a flight attendant. And sort of. And people came up with a whole bunch of reasons why I couldn't. And then Scott Renfro was term limited. And people came to me and said, hey, we want to keep this seat. You've got name recognition. You do a great job. Why don't you consider running for state senate? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking of being a flight attendant. In the end, I decided, okay, I'll run for state senate. And then after I got elected, it was a pretty big margin. It was Weld County, and it was a pretty big margin. And much like Senator Scott, I got elected, and I'm thinking, wow, now what do I do? Am I qualified? Am I smart enough to do this job? I didn't know really much about it. The inner workings. And I'm thinking, man, am I qualified? Am I smart enough? I got down here, and within the first few days, I figured, man, I'm more than qualified. Maybe not smart enough, but I'm thinking, man, I'm more than qualified to do this job. But it's been a great run for me. I mean, personally, I don't mean that as bragging or anything like that. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think one of my best bills or legislation is when I wasn't even here, was when I was the sheriff. One of my campaign promises back in 2002 was I'm going to put sex offenders on the webpage. And wasn't sure if it was legal or not, but I said, I'm going to put sex offenders on the webpage. And I got elected, so now I got to live up to my campaign promise. So we did it. My wonderful staff at the sheriff's office, we did it in a matter of months. And it probably, technically, maybe possibly not legal or following statute at the time. And so nobody else would do it. Weld County was the only one that did it for over 2 years because everybody was afraid they were going to get sued. And I didn't care. I've been sued before. And it was like, won't be the last, won't be the first. And so I came down here and worked with the House Rep, Dale Hall, and got my first taste of the sausage because I'm thinking, man, this is a great idea. Everybody's going to love it. Everybody's going to love putting sex offenders on the webpage. 2 senators killed it that first year, conservative Norma Anderson and liberal Senator Gordon. They hated it. And so came back the second year, and it passed with some compromises. And that's when I learned what this place is really about. It is about compromising. We had to make a lot of compromises on that bill. And now every single agency in the state has their sex offenders on the web page. Talking about compromise, as the good senator said about being sheriff, you say, hey, do this, and it gets done. Here, it's not quite so. And it's like, do this, and it's like, well, who are you? What do you want? You don't have that stick down here. But, you know, I look back and like I said, mentors is a term used loosely, but it really is true in my case. I look at my first 4 years, Cadman and Ellen Roberts and Mark Scheffel. Some of the best times I had were with them and Kevin Grantham. We'd go down on 16th Street Mall and go bowling down at Lucky Street, or Lucky Strike. We'd go down there and go bowling. And, you know, we had that camaraderie, but yet, you know, Ellen Roberts was a good friend of mine, and she... Oh, man. Anyway, we're in committee in judiciary my first year, and I'm asking some questions. It was a law enforcement bill, and I get this text from her. Maybe that's where I learned it to do with Robert. I get this text from her. You don't get extra credit for asking questions. Okay. So I didn't ask that many questions. A couple days later, man, she's asking questions right and left, so I returned the favor on that text. Mark Scheffel, my first year hearing the budget. You know, we're at our caucus meeting, and Kent Lambert is down there in the circle, and I'm sitting next to the majority leader. And he leans over and he goes, hey, I got the best question ever for you to ask when it comes to the budget, and ask our JBC member. I go, oh, wow, great. I go, here is the majority leader telling me, a brand new guy, this awesome question. I can't believe he's going to let me ask it. And I go, what is it? What is it? And he goes, first you got to do this. You got to stroke your chin, do this a little bit, nod your head some, rub your temple, do this again, and then you ask this, the best question, the most important question of this whole budget cycle. And now I'm on the edge of my seat. Yeah. Tell me, because I'm going to look smart. I'm going to look like, you know, I got the greatest question in the world, and everybody's going to carry me off on their shoulders because of this wonderful question. He looks at me and goes, this is what you need to ask. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Wow, all right, I didn't ask. But those are the kind of memories that you have down here, and that's what makes this place fun. What makes it fun is arguing over policy, getting down here in the well, and then going to Lucia's office. So we had, Senator Holbert and I ran the magazine repeal our first year. And during committee, went from 1:30 to almost midnight on that one bill. And Lucia, I could tell she was a little upset. And she leaves to go into her office. I follow her. We sat down and had a drink and just had a wonderful time. And those are the kind of memories that you have down here. You know, I consider all of you friends and mentors. I learned, like I said earlier, everybody comes here with a different perspective. And it's not, you know, homogeneous. And even though I've never been invited to the Hispanic caucus, and I had to start my own Hispanic caucus, the Republican Hispanic caucus. If anybody wants to see it, I do have my birth certificate, if anybody would like to see it. But I consider everybody here a mentor. I've learned from everybody. And Senator Holbert, I appreciate, you know, your 4 years and that I've been able to, you know, be the assistant, and every one of you is a mentor. I'm going to miss you all. I don't know if I'm going to come back ever, but so you're all welcome to come up to Weld County and have a wood-fired pizza from my. I'm going to be politically incorrect. I have a man deck, and I have a wood-fired pizza oven up on my man deck, and you're all welcome to come up and have a beer and a wood-fired pizza up on my man deck. And I guess I just want to say, lastly, it's like. I'm going to steal a line from Douglas MacArthur, and I think it's so true. Old legislators never die, they just fade away. And I think that is so true. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. You know, you become a has-been once you leave this place, and that's not a bad thing either. It's a good thing, because you're going to get new people, new ideas, new policy, and it's going to make Colorado a better and stronger place. And so I want to thank you all for your kindness and for your love and for my 8 years with most of you. Thank you.